folks. It is I on the Illini Instant Take. This was a very challenging loss for the Illini Cat. I'm gonna say one thing though right off the bat. I do get tired of fans of teams going, "Oh, our team should have won. It would have been easy. We should. It was handed to us." There's two teams on the field. Both teams want to win. I thought these were evenly matched teams. But I also thought the Illini just struggled to consistently deal with the interior defensive line of Minnesota. And I think PJ Fleck gave Illinois an opportunity with what I thought was stupid fake punt that gave Illinois a short field. And I really thought Illini had a shot there at the end, but Illinois' defense couldn't keep the lead, and so here we are, an opportunity for the Illini to go to 7-2 and have a first double-digit year in quite some time. Will now have to happen if the Illini can close out 3-0 and then win their bowl game. Thoughts?
Very, very disappointing. Like we said earlier in the week, we talked. We talked at halftime. To me, you should be able to score more than 25 points in a Division One basketball. I mean, Division One football game. Number one. My other concern is the offensive line. The last play of the game speaks for itself. It just does. That has to be a major, major upgrade in the offseason. Teams know it. I mean, I can go back to there's been so many games where the game was on the line, and I don't want to say Illinois was lucky because you win games. I get it, but it's just embarrassing to watch this happen to them all the time. And I give Minnesota credit. They're two evenly matched teams, but I don't think Illinois came to play to start the game with. We've said that they looked flat to begin with. I don't have any faults against Henry. You can't expect the defense to win games for you every week.
Yeah, I thought the offense was tough, and I think consistency. That's the standpoint that's really hard to deal with. Is that from an offensive consistency standpoint? I don't know how the heck you're supposed to be able to call things throughout a game reliably when every other play you can't run up the middle because the line's being caved in, and then today uh, right tackle and even the tight end who was helping Chip on the defensive end out there. There was just a pass rush coming. At least it wasn't Altmaier's blind side most of the time, but that pass rush was there every single play, and it didn't seem to matter what Illinois did as an offensive line. Now, when you talk to players out there, are there kids out there, recruits, who look at that and they say, "Oh, this team's pretty good, and I got an opportunity to get on the field right away"? Is that at least a selling point for Illini coaches?
No, the selling point with the Illinois coaches, and Mike, I don't want to disappoint our listeners. No, I don't get that. What I get that they liked about Illinois is Brett Bielema's history, Brett Bielema's ability to put guys in the NFL, and the third thing, which I probably should have said first, is player development. That is a huge thing to football players today. Coming into play, I don't know if that's a big deal anymore for some kids. Sure, it is for some, but not for all. They want to have a chance to get better and have a chance to showcase their skill, play at the next level. I just don't know what the answer is, and I'm gonna tell you the play calling today. And I'm a big Barry Lundy fan. I like him. I really do. He's made strides since he's been there, but it's so predictable. And I'm sorry, I don't want to see him out the middle all the time. You know darn well, 60% of the time they're on the first down. They're going to take the ball and they're going to run right up the middle every single time. And if we know that, other teams know that.
Okay, we're going to keep going after that play because we should run the ball up the middle. I'm not certain what the theory is, but that's the offense seems to do much better as much as people may not like it, and it doesn't help sometimes a defense that needs a breath to go with a first down pass play, which then can get you into a three passes and you're punting the ball. But the Illinois offense seems to run better when you use those stud wide receivers to set up the running blocks. And that seems to be the way I would look at that personally.
Well, it would be nice to see them. What is wrong with throwing the ball three times in a row? I would like to see that. If they're going to throw it once, you can bet they're going to run it twice. If you got to throw the ball 3 times down the field, so what? That doesn't matter. You have the rest of the game to throw the ball. I mean, excuse me, to run the ball. It's the same thing. I'm not surprised. And again, I'm not being critical. I just want to see something different. I've seen it all year, and you have people who just want to sit and run the ball all the time. Great, if you can be effective doing it. Here's my other thing I was going to say at halftime. If you're going to run the ball a lot, then get 5, 6, 7 yards on the first down. If that's what you're going to do. They don't do that. Right away, Mike, it's 2nd and 8, 2nd and 6 or 7. Good teams find ways to get 5, 6, 7, 8 yards on first down. They don't.
Yeah, and I do think it comes back to, at some point, Illinois doesn't have the breakaway speed that other teams have. Illinois gets stuck in a situation where they have to be a little more creative in the play calling. I just think ultimately, I was hoping the offensive line would be better than what it's played. I don't know how you feel about that. Again, nothing against the players, but we expected this team to be stronger on the interior offensive line than they have been, and I think that's been a disappointment all year long.
I want people to understand because we make a comment, we're not ripping the players or ripping the coaches. We're allowed to have feedback, and our feedback is the offensive line. I don't have a problem with our running backs. I think our running backs are good enough. I thought Caden Fagan was good enough. They don't open up holes. I mean, I don't know if it's the system. I couldn't tell you, but it's not working. I know that. I know Luke Altmaier would never, ever say anything about the offensive line, but the last play of the game, I looked at that play and I don't you saw it coming. You could clearly see he jumped off the line so quick. The Illinois offensive lineman was 3 seconds late. He was not even close. Teams are going to continue to do that. They scout. It's the Big Ten. You know they're going to do it. So because we have a take doesn't mean we're being critical or negative. It is what it is. And again, if you don't think other teams see that, because I tell you what, Michigan State's going to do it, and Rutgers is going to do it, and so is Northwestern. Every team has done it. You have to make adjustments, and if you can't make adjustments to it, this is what's going to happen. They don't blow teams out, like I said to you. We knew at the start of the game how close this was, and it showed again.
I was disappointed because you got to look at this thing with a little bit of balance, for lack of a better word. I thought that ultimately the Illini had their opportunities, and in fairness, Minnesota didn't really run out and take it either. They had opportunities as well. And the interesting thing is, in this new NIL world, the teams in the middle of the Big Ten, it seems like all the games go down to the last 2 minutes. It's almost like watching the NFL right now.
Illinois is lucky that there is NIL, so they put themselves in position to do that. I At first when NIL was mentioned, I wasn't a fan, but then I thought about it, and I've said this before. For a team like Illinois, it's great if you have people who can fund it and put out enough dollars. It gives you a chance to compete and not get blown out. It just does. I mean, like we can all think, Zakari Franklin's here. Luke Altmaier. If it wasn't for NIL money, I'm not saying that's the only reason that they came, you wouldn't have those players. It's and every coach and every system is different. I said that, but I know Brett is big on his red shirt, him redshirting kids and getting linemen that can play. But the one thing I've always trusted with them is that they have an eye for talent. They can see things that other people can't see. Today, it was just glaringly different. I mean, a lot of people criticize, the defensive line at the beginning of the season. I remember, when we did one of our first 2 podcasts, we all talked about, how great the offensive line was going to be, and it's been the opposite. Again, I can't fault Andrew Henry today. I mean, I can't. You know, the late call on Luke Altmaier, I think, was a horrible no call. I know there was a play, it was a Zakari Franklin got hit in the head. He was calling for it, and they called it. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think they called a pass interference call the entire day today.
No, and there's a lot of hands play that they let go. It's hard to know when they're going to let it go and when they don't. I think against, again, Minnesota and Illinois, I think they let both teams hand fight. if you were Minnesota or Illinois playing against Ohio State, you're going to get a few of those called against you. That's just the way the league seems to go right now.
But Brett is smart, Mike. Sorry to cut you off. Brett is a smart guy who knows the rules. I can assure you, at some point, that hit is going to be addressed. How many times, have you seen that call go against Illinois? He was down. He was clearly sliding, and it's a no call. I just think it was a bad officiating crew, and I didn't want to mention it. I mean, we see that there's a subscriber here who talked about the no call. I agree with him. I'm not going to say they lost the game because of officiating, but that's a call you got to make. You really have to make that. And Brett is a master at the rules, and I can assure you it's going to be addressed. Even the call on Scott. I mean, it's like Illinois can't catch a break when it comes to those things. And Mike, you mentioned it. If that's Michigan or Oregon or Ohio State, you don't call that. Can you imagine what's going to happen? But until you get that reputation, you're not going to get those calls all the time.
No, I totally agree with that. You're in a situation where you just have to hope that you can make a difference. And the bottom line is you got to keep your score into such a level that the refereeing doesn't make a difference. And there was a few plays where Minnesota got away with holding that they talked about. I thought there was at least one play that Illinois had blatant holding that they didn't call. For the most part, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think that was a targeting call. If the hit on Luke Altmaier wasn't a defenseless player, quarterback giving himself up, then that guy catching the ball, then and they're the same. You either call one or you either call both or you call none. And I do feel like Luke Altmaier gets fewer calls than other people.
Yes.
But that does point out one fact. He's probably got to get rid of the ball a little quicker if that keeps happening. That's one of those things. Now, Illinois football needs to figure out what's the goal, playoff, top-notch bowl, or any bowl. And look, if you're the coach, you're saying, well, we're going to go to the playoff, and Josh Whitman is building to go to the playoff. He's been very clear about what his goals are for this program. So I don't know that you would disagree that Josh and Brett are trying to focus on making the playoff. Would you agree with that, Ked? What do you think?
That is the goal. I mean, every coach he hires, it's championships. It's Big Ten and national championships. And is this team good enough to compete in the national championship? Probably not. But this today loss, it stings. It really stings on all levels, and the question is right. They need to figure out what they really want. I have people texting me, "Oh, you blame the coaches for not getting the kids prepared." Wrong. These kids, they're college kids. They know what's at stake. I don't, and I don't want to hear we didn't do this, we didn't do that. The opportunities are there, and you can only do so much as a player. I understand that, but if your goal is to win and to win at all levels, you have to bring it every week. It doesn't matter who your opponent is, because if you don't, I just heard PJ Fleck talk about Illinois' ranking, and those players read social media. They read it, and we're talking about going to the playoffs and all that. That fuel fire to Minnesota. But if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. You can't come in and play like that. They look flat.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to go back to the Illinois football needs to figure out what it is. The goal is a playoff. I think that's clear. But the bottom line is we just watched Ohio State sleepwalk to a 10-0 deficit and then woke up and beat Penn State 20-13. So basically, Penn State didn't score a touchdown and they were outscored 20-3 after the first quarter. So when you look at that, Ohio State's got $20 million and Illinois wants to make the playoff. But realistically, as you said, Brett Bielema can't afford to miss on a player evaluation. And they've got to be able to target very specific. It's like a surgical strike, the portal, because they have to find guys at the position that they want, and they have to find guys that they can afford, and they have to be able to make a difference. That's three things there. That is not easy to do, is to come up with guys you can afford, guys at the position you need, and guys who can make a difference. And that's what Illinois has to do with 3 to 5 million that Ohio State doesn't have to worry about with 20 million.
And on top of that, There's 17 other teams with that same recipe trying to do the exact same thing. So Illinois has to be attractive. You know, great if you want to go and you want to take, $700,000 to go play a team to play on a team, but then you don't win and you're not being showcased. What good is that? They're competing against the big boys, and they have to try to figure out a way to be successful. I've mentioned it multiple ways with Brad Underwood. Whatever recipe he does, he has always put a good product on the. He'll play the game, whatever that game is, he'll play it, and that's what good teams do. If you don't have the budget, I mean, I'm sure it's separate from men's and women's and football and things like that, which I know is true. But they have to have a recipe. They have to have an identity of what you want. Illinois has everything else that everyone else has. They have an unbelievable fan base, great fan base. Facilities are top notch. You're in one of the top two conferences in the world, Big Ten or SEC. Why shouldn't you be attractive? Why shouldn't you be able to go out to get 4 and 5 star kids? No, you're not going to be Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon. You're not going to get, a roster of 20 kids of 5 star recruits, but you should get your share of them. And that's how you compete. The reason, to me, if people really want to know, when you do recruiting, I've done this for a long enough time. Women's basketball, men's basketball, and football. The difference between a 4 and 5 star recruit, mark this down, ask anybody. The difference between those guys is speed. The 4 star recruits can shoot just as well as a 5 star recruit. Okay, but when you
Sometimes
have
better.
yes, but when you have because what puts that 5 star kid over the edge is the wheels that's on his feet. That is the difference. A basketball player who can get whatever they want. You look at a guy like Ayodu Sumu. He was a great basketball player. He was a 4 star kid, and then he was faster, and he became a 5 star kid. That's the same way with football. You have to be able to do that. And with Ohio State and Oregon, what you saw last week, their linemen could move like they were all fast.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And that to me is when you look at this program, again, the problem I guess Illini fans have is Illini fans have had a tough road to hoe compared to being an Ohio State fan. I talk about that all the time. Ohio State fans have had to fight through 4 losing seasons since 1951. Illinois fans have had literally twice, or maybe even 3 times, but for sure twice in that time where they've had 10 years in a row of losing football. So there's a difference there. And right now, do you think this team is in any danger? They have three games left. They have a bye week next week, and then they play at home against Michigan State in their last game, and then they play on the road at Rutgers and Northwestern. Do you think they're in danger of end of the season collapse like they had a couple years ago when they started off 7-1 and ended up 8-4?
Mikey, yes. Our colleague Matt Stevens made a comment on one of our podcasts that Illinois could possibly, no matter what happens after this game, they'll be favored in every game. I disagree. If they are, great. I can take a lose all 3 games. Michigan State has a great quarterback. They have a good receiver. Rutgers was a good team coming in to begin with. You don't know what you're going to get with Northwestern. Yes, I do believe that, and that's why I'm kind of frustrated with the lack of energy today because now you have to beat Michigan State. You can't lose at home another home game. So I do have concerns, and I'm not saying the team is going to roll over and play dead. I think that I have trust in the coaching staff. If you want to hear me complain, if you say, kid, okay, so what are you really mad at? What I'm really mad at, and this is the one thing I'm going to say, and it is not the play calling, I'm not blaming the coaching. I am tired of not being able to get 5, 6, 7 yards on first downs, and it's predictable. I'm sick of seeing the predictability. That's the one thing that frustrates me. If you have to throw 7 times, like I mentioned earlier, then that's so be it. You got another 40 minutes to run the ball 16 times. Teams are taking that away, and then you put the pressure on Luke Allmeyer or a receiver to make a play. That's not fair.
They've got to figure out what is going on in terms of running on first down, but there's got to be a sense of what are they going to do. And I think some games Lunny has better opportunities when he starts off passing more often on first down, getting the defense guessing, and that loosens things up, both passing and running. And I do think in the modern game, we probably need a team that's going to be a little bit more pass happy, where we see a Luke Altmaier having 33 passing opportunities. Maybe he gets close to 40 every game because that gives you a superior mix on first down. It does two things. One is he's not, hopefully not passing on that 3rd and 11 where he's a target back there. And second thing is now the defense is a little softer for the run, and I would like to see a little bit more of that. Now, when we talk about what's going on, I got to be honest with you. I see people talking about somebody is at every Moeller game. That was my first game ever, was a 0-0 tie. It's amazing. I'm still a fan. But I will say that if you need a complete upgrade, that's easy to say, but you have to pay for it. And so when I watched Ohio State, and one of their wide receivers was a Chicago guy, and if you want to if you want a player like that, you have to find a way to attract them. And generally, Illinois doesn't have the pockets deep enough to do that. And if you want to compete and get the best players, that means you're competing with Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon, teams like that. And players come there for great facilities and all those other things. Plus, they come there because of a very robust NIL program. So it's going to take, to me, there's a stepping system, and Illinois needs to become a consistent winner, which gets you more money, which allows you to move up to the next levels. So I guess as much as I'd love Illinois to end up and be 10 wins every year, I'm not certain that our budget would have the talent necessary to be 10 wins year in and year out.
This is the run my own business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
I don't know about you. I want to make one small comment that you made earlier. I don't care about running the ball first down. Like I said to you, get 5, 6, 7 yards with it.
Yeah,
As
I
far
agree.
as far as the budget is concerned, you have to develop that. That's winning. And don't get me wrong, Illinois has beat out some good teams for players. I'll use Malik Elzy. That's a kid who doesn't hardly play a lot, see the field. Michigan won a national title. That kid would have went to Michigan. He would have won a national title last year. So yes, Illinois is attractive enough to now it is, in my personal opinion, to beat some of these teams. I just look at the women's basketball program. I had a guy call me this morning freaking out because Illinois had a basketball player, women's player that committed to Illinois that Iowa really, really wanted. Iowa's would win. They went to 2 Final Fours back to back years. So yeah, you can do that stuff with Illinois. Brad Underwood can do it. Bielema has done it. But you have to win games to show consistency because other coaches will say, I would say, why go to Illinois? You win 3 games, you're going to be sitting home during the holidays. Well, now they're in a bowl game, but don't just go to a bowl game where you're sitting outside when it's negative 45 degrees outside snowing. Win enough games where you can go somewhere in Florida so people can go vacation and want to be with their families where it's warm enough. They deserve it. They've had a good season. I don't care if they won every game by 1 point. Take the next step.
And I look at where we're at now, and they're going to have a week off, which I think they need some for the injuries, particularly in the defensive backfield. They need a week off. Michigan State is up early on Indiana. And I think Jonathan Smith, if you listen to either my Heat Checks and Hail Marys podcast, or if you listen to Big Sports Radio, and not so much on the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular, because we don't always talk about the rest of the Big Ten, but we've been very complimentary of what Jonathan Smith has done at Michigan State. We thought that team was probably the second worst team in the league, ahead of Purdue, the worst. And they've played extremely well under Smith. They'll be obviously coming in here with the opportunity to try to make a bowl. They're going to be fired up. And then you've got Rutgers and Northwestern. And I think the key here is Illinois now 6-3, but they're a team that has played close games and won most of them, being 3-1 in one-score games. To me, that's a sign of good coaching, and the team's had the discipline to come through. It's also a sign that the talent isn't overwhelming, which means if you, to your point, if the team doesn't bring it, there's going to be a problem. And they've got to figure out, they've got to get a little healthier, and then they've got to figure out, how do we bring it 3 weeks in a row? So that, because a 9-win season, now you're in Iowa territory, and now players are looking, saying, hey, you know what? I can go to a New Year's Day bowl where I play an SEC team like you're talking about in a warm weather place. And that's something that's attractive to players.
That's just attractive. And when you're down there practicing, those players come visit. They know where they're going. It's the Big Ten does a great job of marketing their teams, and the University of Illinois has one of the best marketing programs in all of college athletics. They do a good job. So just win, and win games. I look at every game this season other than Purdue, and I don't have the stats in front of me. I could. When have they beat a team by 30, 40 points?
But I think Ked does, but that may indicate something.
Which is what, they're not good enough to do it, or
they're not good enough right now. Yeah, Brett Bielema, he was pretty good at blowing people out at Wisconsin.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Open up another can of worms, but you're right.
And again, I'm more proud of this Illini team than many of them, because they could be 3-6 right now, and they have persevered. They've done the little things right. And even this game, they make one pass block there at the end of the game, and maybe they tie it up and win it in overtime, and everybody's all happy about the 7-2 Illini.
I thought that was going to happen. I'm really, watching the game with people, I'm not worried about them getting the ball down the field. If there was one play I do over, in crunch time, and as great as Dixon has been, he would not be the guy I'm trying to throw the ball to late in the game situation like that, because it's a pressure situation. I'm looking for Franklin or Pat Bryant or the tight end in that situation. But you know what? If he makes the catch, then I look stupid for saying it.
Yeah. And again, I go back, and I'll be real clear, as somebody noted on here, as somebody who's been a Illini fan for almost 50 years that I can remember, probably 47, let's be honest here. This team has shown a lot more heart and a lot more, to be truthful, stone cold execution under pressure than many of the better Illini teams. I mean, when these games get close, this team, even this game, came down to one missed block on offensive line, and Luke got hit. I'm pretty proud of what this team has accomplished. And I think we go back to what we talked about after the Oregon game. Illinois has made one heck of a journey from the Lovie Smith era up to here. And people focus on Oregon and Ohio State. Well, they're up at this level. So while Illinois has made a big journey, they've got a lot higher that they have to go. And you can't let that second part of the journey break your fan base or break your booster base.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to figure out. They're going to have to, this sounds so weird, pay kids. You have to go get them. I get the high school things, but right now, if you look at the season, and I mean, let's face it, they're going to a bowl game. But if you look at next year, you know what you're missing. They're okay at quarterback. They're okay at receivers. They have to get a better defensive end. You have to get guys that can protect your quarterback. I know, and I'm going to find the statistic and I'll tweet it. Luke Altmaier has been sacked more than anybody in the Big Ten, and is one of the tops in the country as well. That tells you. So we're not complaining. People can say, "Oh, you guys are being negative Nellies." That's the last thing anybody should ever say about me. But the statistics don't lie. That kid has been on his back an awful lot, way too many times. Today he didn't have a chance to even throw the football, to be honest with you. So he's been hit too many times, Mike. I know he's always, looking over his shoulder. People are saying he needs to get rid of the ball quicker. There's a lot of things that go into play with that.
Here's how I look at this, and this is what we have to think about. If you're thinking as Brett Bielema, I'm certain thinks about these things, but Illinois boosters think about, if you look at the kid from Chicago, Phillips, the 2026 offensive tackle, he's visiting Nebraska today. He's the number one prospect in Illinois and the number 5 offensive tackle in the country. And that's Claude, and I'm going to try to pronounce his last name because I don't know how you pronounce M and P, Mapoma. Um, that's the type of kid. You'll know that Illinois is getting better when they have the ability to grab that type of kid, which is a combination of great recruiting, and it's also a combination of budgetary acumen to get those guys to come. And if Illinois can put a fence around that and get some of the best players in Illinois, the difference makers, that's when you'll start to see this team elevating to that next level where they're 9 and 10 wins every season. And it's not an easy place to get there. And Illinois doesn't have Phil Knight, who can drop millions into your thing or say, hey, we're going to give you cool uniforms. We're going to give you 47 of them. You can use a new uniform every quarter if you want to. They don't have that factor. So you're going to have to figure out how to put a fence around that. And I do think there are schools like Illinois, Georgia, Texas, who try to recruit out of a major metro area that everyone tries to recruit out of. Because if the University of Texas could just lock up Dallas, Fort Worth, they wouldn't need to recruit anywhere else. If Georgia could just lock up Atlanta, they'd probably be fine. And it's hard. You're not going to lock up a Chicago, but if you can get a kid of that talent to come down, and that's where Brett Bielema needs his IO.
Mike, when you called and asked me about that kid and asked me about Illinois chances, I told you yes. But I also said to you, that's an Oregon or Ohio State and Michigan type player. That's why you need to go get guys like that. To answer your question, and he's visiting Nebraska, you're not going to get every kid from your home state. But to your point, that's what you have to. That's what you have to get.
Yeah.
You can't miss on kids like that.
Yeah, and some people are talking about Portnoy and his talk about somebody to play for the Wolverines. And I'm not certain. If you are going to pay one kid to $3 million to play for your team, you better be right, because you're also in a situation where you're going to throw the team atmosphere right into a blender and just destroy it if you guess wrong. So there's a part of me that says that's a good in theory, but boy, that's a challenging one if you do that wrong. And if you get that kid who's highly ranked but doesn't pan out, and we can go through tons of recruits that are supposed to be great quarterbacks who never do it on the field, you can really wreck a program. That's the problem that you have when the boosters start taking control like this, is now you've got a booster who's like, I'm going to pay you $3 million. You got to get Bryce Underwood. And what if Bryce Underwood he's not the next big thing, and you're paying a kid $3 million? You have to live with that decision too. I don't know if Portnoy is going to be willing. What does he do in year 2 when Bryce wants his $3 million and maybe Portnoy didn't think he was good enough?
Well, Mike, when it's all said and done, you're right. They're going to have to, you have to be aggressive. You have to be, if you want to go out and win, like you just said, you have to have an alumni base. But our colleague Brad Sturdy said, you can only go to the well so many times. I agree with that, but how are other programs doing it? Now, Oregon is in a different league. I understand that. But for the most part, and a lot of people don't, I don't want them to misunderstand us. Every kid on these rosters aren't getting $1 million, regardless of what you think. That's not happening. Some of these kids are getting, 75,000, 100,000, and that's a lot of money where you can spread around to a lot of players. So don't think that every kid that's coming into a football program is demanding that, because they're not.
I think the Illini played a close game with a team that I would say is slightly more talented than they are. Illinois had their opportunities, weren't able to cash them in. Minnesota had a lot of opportunities, and they able to cash in one more. I don't think there's a lot of difference between these two teams. I think over the last 4 years of the Bielema era, The Minnesota games have generally been one-score games or close games, and Illinois has been able to eke it out. This time it was Minnesota. Now Illinois has to figure out, how do you get better in this next, using this bye week to face a Michigan State team that's going to come in with a lot of confidence, and they do have some talent on that team, and then go play at Rutgers, where your biggest asset's probably their quarterback. And then you play Northwestern. It's a rivalry game that, I know it's a cliche, but you throw the records out the window and see what happens. Ked, any final thoughts on your end?
This bye week comes at a bad time for me. Injury wise, I think it's great to heal. But now the fans have to stew on this loss for 2 weeks. That's one of my concerns. And my also another concern is try to change things up, because teams are what you have to sell, everybody's seen it. People in the bye weeks, this is what you utilize to give teams different looks and to become good at it.
I do think that this is a game I don't panic over. Nobody's happy about a loss, but when you go through this, you're going to have games that are close and you're going to end up a little bit short. Illinois has had a phenomenal record in those games over the last couple of years. This time didn't work out so good. And I do think when you look and you see guys like Tony Bennett, well, why did he retire? Well, he didn't want to have to deal in this type of situation. So unfortunately, he decided to move on. And that's a decision that he can make, because he's also got millions of dollars in the bank. And now the players are going to have that. And while I'm not necessarily happy with the structure of college sports right now, I have a hard time feeling like the players are the bad guys when I see the billions of dollars being paid to broadcast the game, and the millions of dollars that are raised to pay tickets and pay for concessions, and the players probably deserve something. It's unfortunate that there wasn't more forethought put into this, and hopefully as they move forward, they'll figure out a better way to deal with this type of thing. I'm not going to sit there and blame Shad Khan. Shad Khan's done a wonderful job for the Illini, and certainly he has been very supportive over the years and continues to be. So I'm not going to throw any rocks at him. Somebody brought out, we don't have money like other people have. The Illini, they're probably in the top 15 when it comes to basketball NIL, and they're probably not anywhere near that when it comes to football NIL. But the reasoning is because over the years it's been a challenge for Illini football fans, because the team hasn't performed as well over the last few decades. I do think if you take a look at what Brett Bielema is accomplishing here, and I'm not trying to say he's Nick Saban part two, but what I am saying is his standard has moved things up. Now, the easy thing to say is, well, the Illinois standard wasn't good, but I would say if you can give me 100 years of history and show me that Illinois has only won 10 games like 4, maybe 5 times in 100 years, it's partially the coaches, and it's not an easy place to win. Bielema's elevating that. I expect things to continue getting better. But in this world, you've got to figure out how you're going to recruit. And it is much more complicated than it was in the past, because some people, the money is the big deal. And there are places they can go and get that money. And other people, you've got to pick and choose and get the kid who wants to be there. And they also have to have the requisite talent, because at Plenty of Heart, we all know that a player who's all heart without a lot of talent doesn't win many games. Now, I will say a couple things real quick. I always want to tell people about IlliniGuys.com. This is the perfect time of year to subscribe to it. It's basically $99 a year. The key point of that is you get all the stories most of the time ahead of time. We can't obviously give you the final scores ahead of time because we don't know them. Wish we did. We'd be much wealthier. But we will give you your stories ahead of time. You don't have to worry about any paywalls blocking the stories. And this is the key part, you get the message boards where you can talk to Sturdy, you can talk to Ked, you can talk to Larry, you can talk to Matt or myself. It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have more subscribers there. Come on board. You get 6 days that you can play around and see how you like it. The 7th day, you pay for it. And we would love to get this community bigger, because whether you live in Champaign or Chicago, halfway across the country or halfway across the planet, IlliniGuys.com will keep you in the know. Just be watching your Twitter feed, as in a few minutes, Matt will be up from interviewing, and we will have our Illini Guys post-game analysis with the game against Minnesota that Illinois lost 25-17. Until then, go Illini.